Okay, good morning. My name is Jim Boyle, and I'll serve as the coordinator for this morning's conference on hacking and data disruption. These forums are part of the mission of our church to search and to serve, where we aim to provide important information, reliable information about important topics that may impact you personally in your own life and also the life of your community. The forums are in part underwritten by the St. Luke's Internal Medicine Foundation, which is composed of a group of doctors who formerly worked at St. Luke's Hospital and now at St. Vincent Charity Hospital. You know, we've had massive thefts of personal information and financial information through governments and banks and businesses and healthcare organizations, and we have today a very informed speaker who's able to tell us how to protect ourselves from this problem. Tom Mathis is the Chief Information Security Officer at Baldwin Wallace University, and he also is the CEO of TAAK IT, which is a company that provides information security for small and medium-sized businesses. So, Tom, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, don't trip on the wires there. So, right now, as he mentioned, I'm at Baldwin Wallace University. So that's actually a 2-day-a-week gig for me. And the TAAK IT security, to be honest, I am the sole company. What it really comes out to is, you notice at the bottom, I'm actually retired from the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. So I got tired of the 60-hour plus work weeks and all that good stuff. And at Goodyear, I was the head of IT security globally, as well as on the IT leadership team. So going from worrying about 60,000 people around the world to just 3,000 at Baldwin Wallace is pretty nice. So I also, being retired, gives me a lot of opportunity to do things I didn't have when I was working 60 plus hours a week. So as you see from the top there, there's a lot of organizations that I currently involved in. It turns out Cleveland actually has a lot of IT security awareness and organizations. Up on the far left-hand side, the Information Security Summit, that's an organization that we put on at the IX Center, a security conference once a year, and we have about 1,000 people from the area attend. I'm actually on the executive planning committee for that. The CSO Exchange there on the left, that's for the heads of IT security. We come and meet several times a year just to share best practices and that. I organize that. ISC Squared, you know, sometimes this stuff gets to be a little dull and boring. And so ISC Squared is a group, and we meet at the Brew Garden. Even the dullest meeting goes well with beer in your hand.
Only
So,
if you like beer.
Yeah.
Well, you can always drink wine or whiskey.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Well, actually, Brew Garden's great because they have everything. We get 2 tickets, and it doesn't matter what you get. Then we have the FBI Citizens Academy. That's where about FBI trains about 30 to 40 people every year on different matters for security. I graduated that. And then InfoGuard. And InfoGuard's an interesting organization. So in the Cleveland area, we actually have 700 members. I'm on the board for that as well. Again, being retired, I got a little more time now to volunteer with some of this stuff. InfoGuard is a nationwide organization that is a partnership between the FBI and private and public sectors. So it's a way for the FBI to work with the private public sectors on a lot of the cybersecurity issues. What's really interesting and neat about InfoGuard, it started here in Cleveland, Ohio, back in the 1990s. So it worked out so well that other FBI offices started to emulate it, and then eventually it formed into a national organization with thousands of memberships. So as you see, Cleveland is pretty well connected actually in the security community. And this is probably only half of the organizations that are in the area. So this particular presentation that I want to go over today is actually a little bit of an adaptation that an FBI agent and I gave to a bunch of small businesses, because it turns out protecting yourself as well as for small businesses, there's a lot of overlap. So as you go through and see this, if you got a small business or you're still working, unfortunately, sorry for you, you're still working. But if you are, a lot of this stuff will translate into that world as well. So most people are concerned about the script kiddies, the kids that you're worried about hacking. And this young man, he did some hacking. He got into one of the banks and stole some information. But it turns out these guys are not really a big threat anymore. You know, there's still a few of them out there. A few kids get happy, do that sort of stuff, but they're really not going to be a threat to you. So don't think in those terms. Some people think that anonymous, and you know, that's the face of Anonymous. Anonymous is a loosely defined organization of hackers out on the internet. Anonymous, they actually usually go after social issues. You know, a company does something that they don't like, they attack the company, or a government agency, or something like that. You'll find Anonymous isn't really interested in you, for the most part. That's just not their gig. Don't ask me where they get these graphics at. The one on the left, Fancy Bear, you may have seen some articles recently talking about Fancy Bear attacking the organizations that do drug testing for the Olympics. Fancy Bear is the code name for the Russians. So it turns out a lot of your malware and things that people attack, they reuse that code. And that code actually develops digital fingerprints. And that's how you can actually trace back to who's doing what and why they can attribute some of the actions to these different groups. So anytime you read in the news, Fancy Bear, that's the Russians. And they really aren't much of a threat to end users like us. Deep Panda, that's code name for oh, okay.
Sorry.
Usually I don't stand behind podiums. So anyway, Deep Panda, that's the code name for the Chinese. So you'll find Chinese do a lot of intellectual property theft and government hacking. And finally, Charming Kitten. You'll see them cause a lot of terrorist type things. That's actually the Iranians.
Huh.
So it helps understand the little pile of videos. You'll see them referenced in a lot of the trade publications. But they're not really a threat for us. And if you look at it, they actually kind of categorize all these different threat actors into these 6 categories. See, hacktivism, again, the social issues that people worry about. Crime, insider. Turns out for companies, the insider threat is actually more damaging, costs more money than what it does from the outside hackers. And that's the reason insiders, you've already given them access to your systems. They already know how your systems work. So they don't have to go through and figure all this out. So insiders from a company perspective are the most damaging. But again, not going to be so much for us. Espionage, terrorism, warfare. So not to worry about us. Organized crime. Cyber has become big business. Like I said, don't worry about script kiddies, don't worry about the Iranians, don't worry about all these other people. They're really not who us as individuals need to worry about. It's all about cyber crime, and it's all about organized crime and making money. It's really a big money-making business. One of the FBI agents I know, he said he's never arrested a cyber criminal. They're entrepreneurs. Huh. They're businessmen. And particularly in Eastern Europe, where the economy's struggling, they don't have a lot, but they have a lot of really good education, a lot of high skill sets. You'll find a lot of Eastern Europeans are really good at organized crime and stealing your money. That's the people we got to worry about. So, and it's become such a big business. As you see here, I said malware as a service. Malware is like viruses and that. Well, you can actually now go out on the dark web and buy malware. You don't even have to write it yourself, right? So it's a service. Just like, use Gmail and Hotmail, Yahoo Mail as a service in the cloud. Well, guess what? You can buy money mules as a service in the cloud, ransomware, even call centers. So you got a ransomware and you want to actually care about giving, if somebody pays you your money, give them the key back to decrypt their PC. There's call centers now that you can rent on the dark web. So they're emulating a lot of the business practices in organized crime. So that's what we really need to be concerned with from our point of view. And now how we protect ourselves, we'll get into that. But first what I want to talk about is, what are they stealing? So here's a chart from Verizon. And you know, everybody thinks of Verizon as being a phone company. In fact, my iPhone's hooked up to Verizon. Well, it turns out Verizon is being a big company. They actually have multiple things. They do data centers and all that. But if you're got a company and you're a big data breach, Verizon actually has one of the best forensic teams in the world. And so what they do is they go out every year and they work with about 100 different law enforcement and other organizations around the world. And they put together reports on data breaches. And if you ever want to read about that stuff, just go to Verizon, just go to Google and search Verizon Data Breach Incident Response, DBIR. And you'll come up with their charts. And what is really the gold standard when it comes to understanding data breaches. And what Verizon says year after year, as you see on the top, what they're doing is they're stealing personal data at a lot of these companies. They're also stealing credentials. That's really becoming pretty big. And you're asking, well, why are they focusing on personal information and credentials? It comes out to be very simple. Personal information, I can do identity theft. Credentials, well, I could be really sophisticated and hack into people's systems, or I can just steal your password and log on. Logging on is really easy. And the bad guys are lazy, right? They don't want to put a lot of investment into breaking in. So if they can just steal your password and log into your bank, great. It makes it a lot easier for them. So credential theft is really popular. And unfortunately, a lot of people use the same password everywhere. So tip number one, don't use the same password everywhere. So anyway, that's kind of what they're stealing. And the unfortunate thing for us is we have to assume all of our data has been lost. Because you see every day, Equifax, what was the last one I saw? LinkedIn, all these organizations, they're losing our data. No fault of our own, they're losing our data. In fact, yesterday I just saw a article, a researcher found out on the dark web 1.2 billion records of our personal information. And it's for sale. So even if you think you've done a fantastic job, you've protected yourself, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter how good you think you are, somebody else has already lost your information. So, and actually I saw I was at a conference once, I don't know if you guys know Dave Kennedy, you may have seen him on CNN, CNBC and those things. Dave gave a great demo. He stood in front of about 700 people, and Dave said pretty much what I'm telling you. And he says, to prove it, I want somebody to come up to the podium that I don't know. And I want you to give me your name and your address. And I'm going to tell you your social security number and your birth date.
Wow.
Yeah. So he got somebody to come up, and he tells him the information. Dave keys it in. Dave pauses. Oh, he doesn't have it. And Dave says, how long have you been living at that address? The guy said, oh, about 2 weeks. Where'd you live before? And he goes, is that your social security number? Is that your birthday? Yep. And I know Dave, and Dave's a real straight shooter, so I know it wasn't set up. But that just goes to tell you, all our information is really pretty much already out there. So you have to go from this point forward assuming the worst has already happened. Now, if you assume that, and it gets worse, you see who are the data breach victims? Healthcare organizations, hotels. You know, when you use your credit card at a hotel, they're the worst at losing your credit card.
Wow.
Public sectors, small businesses. 58% of the time, small businesses. You know, the big data breaches like Equifax, millions of records sold, that makes the news. But the reality is, a lot of data breaches are going against small businesses simply because they don't have the money and the technical capabilities to secure their environments. Because the large companies like where I was at, we spent millions of dollars to secure our environment, and got a lot of consulting services, that sort of thing. Small businesses don't have any of that. So, now that you got all the bad news out, and it actually gets worse, but how do you protect yourself? So, it's just some real basics. First of all, freeze your credit everywhere. Now, and I put 6 places you need to freeze your credit. Most people think it's just TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, the 3 major credit agencies that you got to freeze your credit at. And I think this presentation the church has, so I'm sure you guys can get it if you want. Innovis is actually the 4th major credit agency people never really know about. NCTUE, it turns out AT&T back in the 90s created its own credit agency just for the telecom industry. So what people do is they don't freeze a credit there, and then people, bad guys, take out cell phones against your name. Then you don't know it till you get a T-Mobile bill. So, and then check systems. So you want to freeze your credit at all those places. At least with your credit frozen, somebody's not going to start taking out credit cards, bank loans, buy a boat that you'll never see, whatever they're going to do. So that is just incredibly important. Freeze your credit everywhere. The other thing you got to think about is, and I know a lot of people, particularly older people, don't like to do stuff online. You know, they're just totally scared of doing banking and other things online. I get it. But if you don't take ownership of those online accounts, somebody else will. And they're not going to do you any favors. So even if you don't like to do banking online, sign up for your banking, get your user ID and your password, and then never use it, if that's your prerogative. Because you don't want somebody else taking over your online identity. So you want to go to Social Security office and sign up and get your account, IRS, post office, and of course your brokerage accounts and all that. Because you want to control your online identity. You don't want somebody else to control your online identity. So that really becomes critical for us as end users. Another part of the basics, two-factor authentication. Now, what does that mean? If you've noticed, a lot of your banks now, when you log on, they'll give you the option of sending you like a one-time number on your phone, like a text. That's called two-factor. And the reason it's two-factor is because it's something you have, your phone, and something you know, your password. So there's 2 ways of verifying your identity. The third identity is who you are, like a fingerprint, retinal scan, and those methods are kind of more expensive for the most part for banking. So two-factor. So if you're going to do your brokerage account, you know, I do Vanguard and PNC. Both of them have two-factor authentication, and you log on with your user ID and password, sends you a text to my phone, and then I log on. That way, I have a high probability of knowing it's me logging on, not some other bad guy who stole a password. Use passphrases. So I think in the years gone by, people tried to tell you, use these really bizarre
you couldn't remember.
That's
Yeah.
like mine.
Nobody can remember that stuff, right?
I can't.
But you see this phrase, that was an issue back in 1979, question mark? That's actually something people can remember. And it turns out, after doing some studies, that
I do phrases.
to computationally crack that was an issue back in 1979 is virtually impossible because it's long. And cracking through hacking, that little cryptic thing is actually pretty easy. So when you start doing passwords, forget about everything you knew about doing, that gibberish, and just do passphrases. And length is the key. Length. And you don't have to do special characters. You don't have to do any of that stuff that you've been told before. And NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, has come out actually with a white paper on all this, discussing how computationally that short cryptic thing is actually of no value. And actually NIST also does a study that most people are forgetting their small little passwords like that. And you give them long passphrases, they actually remember it.
Don't some places where they ask for your password put a limit on the length?
So
They want something between, say, 6 or 8 and 15?
yes, so some of the question was, don't some of the places put limits on your passwords of 6 to 8 characters, or you have to do special characters? And the answer is yes, not everybody has adopted the NIST standard. But I can tell you those people in the security industry were adopting the NIST standard. But a lot of the websites are not yet, so you gotta play by their rules. Another issue is set your social media accounts to email you when you log in. Again, people are stealing other people's social media accounts in order to harvest their contact list. And then turn the pin on for your phone. Most people don't really think about it, but a lot of us have smartphones. Our lives are now on our smartphones. Your banking is usually a thumbprint away to get onto your banking. Your Facebook, LinkedIn, email, all that good stuff is on our phone. So if you lose your phone, you've now lost, and it gets in the hands of somebody really bad, you've lost everything. So turn your PIN on, and also turn encryption on your phone. And I don't care whether you got an Android, an iPhone, they all do this sort of thing. They do it really well. Another basic, as I mentioned before, never use the same passphrase everywhere. What they're doing now is they steal your Facebook account or wherever it is they stole, and because people are using the same password, then they can log on to all these other sites that you're using. The other thing is, never use the same answers for your security questions. And I know this is a hassle, because you want to choose what's my favorite hobby, stamp collecting, whatever it is, because it's something you can remember. Well, unfortunately, again, a lot of sites people use the same security answers. So when bad guys are stealing credentials, they're stealing the answers to those as well, so they can reset your password. And another thing about those security answers, I don't know if you remember back in the presidential elections when Sarah Palin was running, and this is not a dig against her, but somebody hacked into her email account and started doing bad things. Well, it turned out the answers to her security questions were things like her favorite stuff were on her Facebook account.
Oh, God.
Right?
Because she was so bright.
And she is not alone. That is a common ploy. What you'll find is a lot of people, if you really start looking at those questions, you can probably find their answers on Facebook. It's just human nature. So, the quote recommendation for security people is make your security questions nonsensical. What's your favorite hobby? Chair. It doesn't have to be sophisticated, just not related. And use an encrypted spreadsheet or a password management tool to keep it all straight. Is, you know, I got lots of accounts, right? And I can't keep all this stuff straight. Nobody can. So you use password management tool. And you can go on Google and search, and PC Magazine, and some of these have, you know, reviews on different password management tools. So you can choose whichever one, you know, works best for you. Or just use an Excel spreadsheet and put a password on the spreadsheet. Actually, it turns out Microsoft, when you encrypt an Excel spreadsheet, that encryption actually is military grade encryption. They're not going to break that encryption. But do use a good password for that spreadsheet and back it up. And what I actually do is I print out all my stuff and put it in my fireproof safe.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if something happens to my PC, I've lost everything, right? And if something happens to me, I want my wife to be able to get all that stuff. So, you know, I got a copy of it, and I got a paper copy in fireproof safe. So she always has access to everything. I think that's really important. And there you see at the bottom, never let your browser say your password. People, you know, I know it's convenient, it's fun to do it that way, makes it easy. I'm telling you, those browsers, they don't save those passwords very securely. And if somebody hacks into your PC, they can steal your stuff. Just use a password management tool.
Does it matter if it's not a sensitive kind of account?
Does it matter if it's not a sensitive account, is the question. And I would say that's up to you. I don't know what you define as sensitive. So I have a few accounts that I could care less about. And yeah, I use a password on there that I can remember. And I use that same password, to be honest, on probably half a dozen of those. But if somebody breaks in, there's absolutely nothing there that I care about.
Exactly.
And that's where you got to use common sense. But you also got to understand what the hackers think is valuable versus what you think is valuable. And there can be a bit of a gap there. More basics. And you see up here on the right-hand side, that's actually a gas pump. It turns out the older gas pumps are interesting in that they all use the same key. Isn't that great? So bad guys, not being dumb, some of them are electrical engineers and electronic guys, they actually put circuit boards in those gas pumps so that when you go buy gas, everything works great, but now they got a copy of your credit card. Yeah, and by the way, the Bureau was telling me that they're finding those things in the Cleveland area. It isn't just something for New York City or Orlando. You'll find that here in Cleveland. This right here, you see that little thing that goes across over the ATM? Turns out bad guys can buy those ATM parts online, and then they embed their electronics. I don't know if you can really tell in this picture, so that you do your ATM transaction and it takes a copy of your card. That's actually why for ATMs, I never use ATMs at gas stations. I always go to the bank. And there have been some banks that have been compromised too, but a lot of times your bank manager, they know this happens, so they walk around, they inspect every morning their ATM machines. So if you want the most probably secure ATMs, and I use the ATMs in our bank all the time, that's the way to do it. I like using ATMs, it's easy. But as far as using it at gas stations and other public areas, I tend not to do that. But there are exceptions. Like just before I retired, I got a call on a Saturday and said I got to be on a plane to Europe on Sunday. I didn't have any euros. So I got to Paris and I found the machine out on Paris streets, and I got my euros because I like to eat. So sometimes you got to make compromises. But in general, choose your bank. This little thing right here, you see it for $50 or $60. You can buy those hook them up to your phone with software, and you'll find waitresses will use that to skim your card. And you see that other one over for $19, another skimmer. So people, the ability to skim your cards is actually pretty easy. So the lessons here is, first of all, never, ever, 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 ever use your debit card when you're buying stuff. And the reason being is, one, it gets it into your checking account, but the two is there's no federal laws that limit your liability on your debit card.
That's interesting.
There are on your credit card, $50. And most of the time, I have my credit card stolen a lot of times, and nobody ever charges me the $50.
So if you use your debit card at a public place, does it make any difference if you do credit or you put in a PIN? Both are dangerous?
It
doesn't make any difference?
doesn't make a difference. You just don't want to use your debit card. Now, some banks are pretty good, and they have protection. In your agreement, they'll protect you to some extent, but that is whatever the bank wants to do. It's not federal law. Your credit card is federal law, $50. They have no wiggle room on that. And you know, when you get your credit card agreements, you know, it's 20 pages of legalese.
Yeah.
Man, I can't read that stuff, and I used to read contracts all the time, and you know, I can't read that stuff. And the attorneys I used to work with would tell me the same thing, they can't even read it. So, just use your credit card. And that way you don't have to worry about it. So, hopefully I'm trying to tell you these obvious little things that you can use to protect yourself. None of them are sophisticated. They're all pretty straightforward. This is another scary one. 53% of thefts of identity are not from digital. In other words, it's not a hacker. Look at that. Family and friends. Out of that half, 33% of it, family, friends stealing your stuff. Your partner, spouse,
What about kids?
your dependent's boyfriend or girlfriend. So anyway, half the time, identity theft is because you invited into your house, or your kids invited them into your house, and they're stealing your stuff. So it's just the statistics. Yeah. And you know, the problem is we don't pay much attention to that, because that's not really the sexy news that show up at 6:30 news. You know, you're not going to see, you know, Matt Muir or any of those people talking about that sort of stuff. They're only going to talk about the cyber stuff that thousands of records got stolen. So, and the key here is think about this, and perhaps maybe whatever your personal information is, keep it in a locked drawer so that when you're throwing that party, a bunch of people over, nobody wanders in and gets your stuff. So now let's talk about email. The FBI calls this business email compromise, but it's basically spam. So what the general objective is basically they want to steal the communications between you and your employer or your vendors or your customers, what you're doing, and they want to cause your money to be rerouted to somewhere else. So let me give you an example. Real estate. You're buying that house, a new house, you're moving. You're buying a condo in Florida. That's where I'm going to go here in a couple months. So what the bad guys do is they will compromise your realtor's PC. This isn't a grand scheme. It's just one or two individual realtors. The hacker will watch the realtor's email for pending deals and when they're about to close. And then what they do is the hacker sends the buyer, you, an email on realtor's account looking like it's right from the realtor, you don't know any different, telling you, hey, last minute change, tell your bank to wire the money to here instead of where it used to be.
Oh, wow.
You know, because usually you transfer it over to the title company and all that. So, guess what? That money is gone. And the bank is going to say, hey, I sent it to the place you told me. Well, the moral of the story is never, ever, ever trust email. You know, if the realtor wants you to do something like that, you talk to the realtor over the phone, you face to face. I don't care what it is you're doing, you never trust email as authoritative source when it comes to money. You just can't do that because it's too easy to steal somebody else's account and send email under their name. But this is a common scheme that's going on and it has for the past few years. And that's a lot of money, you know. Money for an entire house gone. Here's another one that actually is getting hit by all the universities right now. An employee's email is compromised, and then the bad guy underneath the employee's email sends payroll, hey, I want you to send my payroll to this new account. And what they'll do is they'll actually Photoshop the check, and it'll have the real person's name, their real address, it'll have a check number, it'll have a routing number and all that stuff at the bottom, and it'll look really official, but it's coming from the bad guy. And then the bad guy also puts in what most people don't understand about email. There's a thing called mail rules. And so what they'll do is they'll put rules in that says when payroll and the people from payroll send you an email, it actually never goes to your in basket. It actually goes into some hidden folder. And then the bad guy's looking there for correspondence. And the bad guy will correspond with payroll saying, yeah, this is okay. So most payroll departments are now catching on. They don't accept those. What they do is they call the person. That's why I've told our payroll, can't trust email. In general, the FBI put this together, and what the bad guys do is they identify a target, they groom them, they exchange information, kind of what I've been describing, and then they cause money to be transferred to that place. That's kind of a standard scheme that is used. And they do it different ways. They're really smart, but it's the same flow.
What does grooming mean?
Grooming, it means building up a relationship with you, getting you to trust me. I'm learning more about you. You think you're learning something about me, which isn't really happening, but that's kind of grooming. So what do you do if you're a victim? Well, besides contact first of all, contact your bank or whoever it is and tell them what bad thing just happened and get them to try and freeze the money. Second of all, if it's a significant amount of money, when I say significant, we're talking $50,000 and higher, you call the FBI immediately. It turns out the FBI has in their Washington, D.C. headquarters building a group just for this. And what they do is, the guy's telling me right now, if you call them and say you've lost $100,000 or whatever it is, and you call them immediately, from the time that transaction happened to about 48 hours, they're getting over 90% of the money back. 72 hours, and sometimes they get lucky. But the first 48 or so hours, they're having really good success with getting the money back.
How likely are you to know within 48 hours?
So the question, how likely are you to know?
Yeah.
You're right, that's a problem. And so that's why if you're transferring a large sum of money for some reason, you need to verify on your end that who you think got the money actually got the money. And if you look over in Brunswick, remember the Catholic church that got ripped off not too long ago? So what's happening was the bad guy had sent the church under an email, hey, route the money to here, here's your invoice, pay here. And the church was paying every month. And then the contractor came by and said, hey, you guys are a few months behind. When are you going to catch up? Uh-oh. It turns out that church lost a little over $1 million. They're building some big expansion. So that was just earlier this year over in Brunswick. It unfortunately happens all the time. So in that case, yeah, they didn't know. It was way too late. The Bureau was not able to get any of their money back. That money's long gone. But for you guys, now that you know, if you're going to transfer a large sum of money, first of all, don't trust email. Second of all, do everything face-to-face or over phone. And third, confirm that they got that money. Because if you don't do the confirmation, then you're not going to know, and you're not going to have that 48-hour window to call the FBI Bureau.
I know when I was transferring money, they had you send a small amount of money to make sure it went through, and then you sent your larger amount of money after that.
Depends on how sophisticated the
This is
receiver
Capital
is.
One.
Yeah. A lot of your major banks are pretty good about that. But as an example of the church, you see.
Start the questions.
Okay. Let me go real quick. I'll skim through these. Okay, so I'm running out of time. Ransomware. You know about ransomware and encrypts your PC. Turns out you can get this document. There's actually a site that has a way to identify ransomware, and they will also give you a clue on how to decrypt it if there's any decryption capability. But the bottom line with ransomware, back up your PC, so that way you don't care. And by the way, if you pay the money, you may or may not get your money, your files back anyway. Phishing. Turns out the bad guys, same thing with email, do it via phone. And you know, you have a fraudster calls, you see the whole loop. Bottom line is social engineering. They're going to trick you into sending money, doing bad things. The quintessential example is Microsoft tech support calling, saying we found out you got a virus, and people give them the credit card in order to solve the problem. Not so much. There's filters for phishing. There's free services from all. I personally have not found the Verizon one to be of any value. And the general thing that I read, none of them are all that good. It's going to take the FTC to crack down before that's going to be good. Gift card scams. You know, gift cards, they scam those gift cards all the time. So if you, unless that gift card when you're buying it is pristine in that package, don't get it. That's really the bottom line. And the people are putting wrong stickers. If the sticker doesn't look like original, what happens is you go to check out, you pay for it. What it is it sends the money to somebody else's card. So again, that gift card's got to be pristine before you touch it. Online scams, stay away from Craigslist. You know, a lot of times what you do is somebody sells something, they sell it for $3,000, the bad guy faking it sends you a check for $4,000 and says, oh, so sorry, would you please send me the $1,000 check back? Well, his $4,000 check's gonna bounce. The $1,000 check they're gonna take and run. Vacation, don't tell burglars you're going on home. You know, when you go take that selfie on the beach, don't post it on Facebook till you get back home. That's saying, hey, steal here. Public Wi-Fi, I'm running out of time. For at home, this is what the bad guys like to steal when you're not at home. So the short of it is get a home safe. If you're a gun owner, get an extra big safe and put all your coins and gift and jewelry. Those gun safes are really pretty good. That's actually where I keep all my stuff. Cobb County. So it turned out we all like to support having a safe environment. Cobb County is interesting in that if you have your own surveillance TV systems, video systems, you can register those with Cobb County. They don't want access to your system. They don't get access. However, if something happens in your area and they know you've got it, then they'll knock on your door and ask for permission to get a copy of whatever's there. Signing up does not give them any legal right to your video, does not entitle them to have access. They just simply know you've got it, and it's up to you to give it to them. But most people are quite happy to do that because they help catch the bad guys. And the rest of the stuff I won't go through because I'm out of time, but you can get a copy of the presentation, but it's your basic stuff. Put a browser on, keep it up to date, use a firewall, backup. And the biggest thing I want to say is if something goes wrong, think about who you're going to call. Your PC is locked up with ransomware. Say you're secretary for some organization. What happens if your PC's dead? Do you have a paper alternative? Who are you going to call to help you fix that? So whether it's the Geek Squad at Best Buy or wherever, think about, particularly if you have responsibilities, say you're a treasurer for some organization. What are you going to do if your PC's dead in the water? So with that, now, rush through the rest of it, but hopefully you go through those slides and get any questions.
How do we obtain those?
Wait a minute. Yes.
So we are going to pass around a clipboard.
Use the mic.
If we don't already have your email and you'd like
That
information
mic's not
about
on.
future forms.
It is on, you gotta speak.
Horizontal.
Okay, so if you
There.
anyway, give us your email if you want to hear about future forums, and we don't share those with anybody. And we have a few simple rules with questions. Raise your hand if you have a question, and somebody from our staff will give you the microphone when it's your turn. And please speak directly into the microphone so that we can all hear your question. And make your questions short, no speeches, please.
I think the first question was how do they get my presentation?
That's my question too, so.
I don't know.
Susan, want to explain how to get the presentation?
Excuse me, we do have a YouTube scenario here that is in effect. So you can get a copy of this by I'm going to have Wayne come here and tell you why, because we're in a transition here with our YouTubes, but this will be available. And the other thing I want to mention is if you're not already on our list to get emails each week, a reminder for that, sign your name and email on the clipboards that I just sent out.
We're going to figure out a way to distribute the PowerPoint. Our speaker's given us permission to distribute the PowerPoint, and I guess we could put that, we could send it to everybody on our mailing list. Would that be all right?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, given all the news this past year of Russian hacking the elections and even cybersecurity issues, and also the news that came out last week that Russia is actually doing a double take and blaming the Ukraine for that.
Yes.
Is Kaspersky a good, trusted source for anti-malware?
Okay, so there's a couple answers to that. First of all, if you look at Kaspersky and the people who run Kaspersky, you'll find a lot of them are former KGB and FSB and SVR officers.
Oh, how interesting.
So do you want the KGB to have access to your data?
That's what I always.
Probably not. So, no, and actually, there's been some cases where they've proven that data from US-based PCs has made its way back to Moscow under Kaspersky, because Kaspersky had at one point a backdoor so that they, quote, copy your data to help you. So, no, I wouldn't touch Kaspersky for anything. Your other question was about the elections. So, we all know about social media and the social media issues with a lot of the fake news. You know, whether you're on the left or you're on the right politically, it doesn't matter. The Russians are sending out absurd stuff, trying to polarize people to one side or the other. So, in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, a lot of those are social media are the vehicles of how they're doing it. And so you got to pay careful attention to that. As far as hacking the actual voting booths and all that go, it's up to the county as to how good that election security is. Now, I happen to know the guys with Cobb County, and they're pretty on top of it. So if you're in Cobb County, I can tell you they're trying to do your very best. The federal government and state government are working with each county to improve their election systems, but your mileage is going to vary because it's all at individual county level. But in general, from what I'm gathering, the election systems are generally pretty good. The issue really comes in to that social media and influencing the voter more than it is trying to hack the actual vote casting.
I'm paranoid. In addition to antivirus purchased from Avast, I have VPN, which is virtual something.
Virtual private network.
Private network, yeah.
Oh.
And master and password protection, where I have a master password.
And I'll call you
Would
back.
you comment on each of these, the VPN and the master password, please?
Master password, you mean like password management tool?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great. You know, they all vary as to what they're good at and what they're not so good at. But as long as you're using one of them, I don't have a particular preference as to which one is good. VPN, let me explain what a VPN is. So when you fire up your browser and you go to your to a site, well, that site is logging what PC you came from, what's your IP address, which is the unique number that is identified with your PC that your cable provider or AT&T give you. That is a way for that site to tell who you are. A VPN service, what it does is it anonymizes who you are. So they don't know much about you. The other thing is that if you're in a hotel and say when I'm in a hotel, I just use my iPhone and I use my hotspot so that my laptop connects to my phone and goes out to the cell tower. That's a secure way. If you attach to the Wi-Fi in the hotel room, well, anybody in the hotel can attack your PC. But using a VPN service, what happens is now all of your traffic from your PC goes directly to your VPN service, and it blocks all the other traffic coming at your PC. So that way, it's a way to be on a VPN, on a Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi service, but actually still be reasonably secure. So VPN services do that as well as anonymize your traffic, and that works out pretty fine, particularly for traveling.
What were those initials?
VPN,
V.
Virtual Private Network. Now, I tend not to use one myself, only because, A, I don't want to pay the money, B is my home system. I have my own firewall, and I'm reasonably secure. And then when I travel somewhere, I use my phone connection. And as far as anonymizing my traffic, I don't. At some point, I just give up caring. I just have all my credit locked and frozen and all that.
I dial into Amazon maybe 5 times a day to look up books and I buy stuff. I think you're suggesting that rather than letting the cookie put my password in, that I type in a long sentence of some sort, which I would prefer not to do. Okay, so my question is this. What does Amazon have of mine that hasn't already been logged into the great database in the sky that I would surrender if I continue to carelessly let the cookie add my password into my login?
So if somebody steals your password or your cookie and that information, then they could log on to Amazon and buy stuff under your account.
But the only thing that Amazon knows about getting money from me is my credit card. There's a $50 limit on that. So is it worth it to me to change my password?
If you're okay with that, then no. I'd just leave it that way.
I've always been afraid to use a password manager because if somebody hacks into the password manager, then they have everything, right?
So that's very true, but I can just tell you that having a different password and different answer to the security questions is more important than risking loss of your password management tool. Most of the password management tools nowadays are pretty secure. Now, 5-10 years ago, there were certainly a lot of cases where the password tools were in fact being broken. I haven't read for quite a while now of a password tool being broken and people losing their stuff. But security is a balance. There's no zero risk option. And like the question before about Amazon, if that's a risk that you're willing to take and you're good with it, that's okay. It's all about balancing risk and what you're feeling comfortable with.
Go ahead.
I have a question over here. So the Apple advertises that they're more concerned about your privacy than everyone else, and I guess I'm skeptical whether that's really true or whether that's marketing. I kind of would like your professional opinion on that.
Apple actually is pretty good. Nobody's perfect, but there's been cases where law enforcement, for example, have wanted to decrypt people's iPhones, and Apple's refused. Apple will not cooperate with much of anybody in terms of giving out personal data. Again, they're not perfect, but they're pretty good in terms of conscientious.
If I'm too lazy to handwrite all my codes and passwords and do it on my computer, which is an Apple, on the front, on the front, is that hackable?
Well, if it's handwritten on front of your PC.
No, handwritten, typed right on. Because I didn't want to do it handwriting. I thought it was easier.
Oh, type it up.
Yeah.
Onto
the front of the PC. Yeah.
On the labels. Well, if somebody comes in to your house, like I mentioned, 53% of.
No, I'm not worried about friends and neighbors. Maybe just somebody can hack into my computer.
If it's typed onto your desktop.
It's in an icon on my desktop. Yeah, that's the word I want.
Okay. I thought maybe you print it out and pay. But yeah, that's hackable because if you click the wrong link and somebody gets onto your PC, they're going to run, unknown to you, algorithms that will look for user IDs and passwords. If you're going to do that, that's okay. do it in an Excel spreadsheet and encrypt the spreadsheet.
How do you encrypt things?
The question was, how do you encrypt things? And the easy thing is, when you go to Excel, over in the file menu, it says password protect your spreadsheet. Doing password protection automatically behind the scene does the encryption for you.
I have several questions. I'll try to limit this. If you're paying bills online for an auto deduct, is it safe to use your debit card for that? I mean, at some point you have to use your debit card to pay something, the credit card.
I use my credit card.
Okay, but then you have to pay your credit card.
Yeah, I log into my bank site on the web, and then I just transfer the money. My debit card never gets involved.
Could you explain that to me?
Now, I bank at PNC, but I think a lot of the banks are pretty similar. When I log on to my PNC account, there's a tab that says transfers. And I click on that, and then I can transfer money from my checking account to my credit card, and that makes the payment.
Okay. So you're not using the payment tab, you're using the transfer tab.
Correct. Now, I do use the payment tab for, well, I have a PNC credit card. So my PNC credit card is how I use transfer. Now, I have a secondary card from Sam's Club and a tertiary card from Costco. Because if somebody steals my, from a hotel from my PNC credit card, I don't want to be stranded with no credit card, right? So I have an extra credit card, and the Sam Club and the Costco card, those I use the payment tab for to pay. But that's the other thing is you might have more than one credit card. And I hate credit cards. I just pay them off at the end of the month. I just really don't like credit. But it's just a way of life. And so I got to have that secondary credit card.
So if you're doing utility bills and you're registered on their site?
Yeah, I just run all through my credit card.
Through the credit card, okay, thank you.
Because I want my cash back.
Right.
I had the good fortune a couple of years ago to have a ransomware attack.
Oh,
announced that all my files had been encrypted, and as soon as it flashed up, I unplugged my external hard drive on which I had all my files backed up. And I spent several hours on the phone with Microsoft getting rid of the virus. Lost zero data. They were asking, I think it was $3,000 to decrypt my data. But if you're not plugged into the net, they can't hack it.
Right. So here's the key thing: is a lot of you have your external hard drive that you use to back up. The bad guys have figured this out, and what they're doing now is they're searching your entire net PC, looking for the external drives, and they're encrypting those now too.
If it's plugged in.
If it's plugged in. And if they, sometimes what they'll do is actually they'll let that ransomware sit there for a couple of weeks, and then when you're looking for the plug-in, so that's why a lot of times people are using cloud-based backup services. Because if you have a fire or something else in your house, that external hard drive, even though it's not plugged in, is not going to do you any good. So the general recommendation is use a cloud-based service to do your backup. If you're going to back it up on a hard drive, then definitely don't keep it backed up. Don't keep it plugged in, and that'll work most of the time.
Go quick.
Early in your talk, you mentioned freezing your credit with the various agencies. Could you tell us a little bit more about how to go about doing that and what exactly it does?
And a backup to that is also, if you're married, do both of you have to do it on each of your names?
Yes.
So the answer is, I froze mine, my wife, both my kids. Freeze everybody is the answer.
How do you do that?
So how you do that? Well, if you remember, there we go. So you got a couple ways you can do this. Each one of those 6 entities, you can go to their website and you can fill out on their website the forms in order to freeze your credit.
Good.
You can also call them, and they have phone numbers on their website that you can call them, and they'll talk you through that whole process. Now, what it means is, let's just say, I'll just use an example. So I was at my condo. We wanted some porch furniture for our balcony, and Home Depot had what I wanted. I get 10% off if I took out a Home Depot credit card.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm thinking, yeah. Well, I can't because my credit's frozen. Because my credit's frozen, and it doesn't allow you to take that credit card out. And what's really frustrating is you ask the person at Home Depot, well, which one of the credit agencies are you using?
Yeah.
They're a deer in headlights. They have no idea. So you end up basically passing up on that 10% a lot of times. Unless you think about this in advance, you call their place, find out which credit agency they do, you go to the like TransUnion or Equifax or Experian, you go to the website, you can unfreeze your credit, then you go get your credit card, and then you go back to freeze it again. It's a pain in the derriere.
There are other fees.
Pardon?
Are there fees for that?
No.
No, there used to be fees to doing all of this, but that has changed over the years. So you can freeze it and you're good to go.